Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Emotions and Emotional Intelligence. In this section, we're going to be talking about regulating emotions. It most closely aligns with Ekman's chapter that he calls Changing What We Become Emotional About. I kind of stammered over that because it's not a perfect lineup between what's in the Ekman book and what I'm going to be talking about. But I think that this is a pretty good tie-in to, the things that we go through as we attempt to regulate our own emotions, to manage our own emotions. So I thought it would be fun if we could start today by taking a little scale. It's just a 10-item quiz. And so if you'd like to play along and see how you score on the scale, please go ahead and grab a piece of paper and pencil or something to write on and come on back and we'll take the scale. All right, hopefully you paused me and now you're back. So here's the scale. We would like to ask you some questions about your emotional life, in particular, how you control, that is, regulate or manage your emotions. The questions below involve two distinct aspects of your emotional life. One is your emotional experience, or what you feel like inside. The other is your emotional expression, or how you show your emotions in the way that you talk, gesture, or behave. Although some of the questions may seem similar to one another, they differ in important ways. For each item, please answer using the following scale. So you have a Likert type scale ranging from 1 to 7. 1 means that you strongly disagree. 4 is neutral. 7 means that you strongly agree, and you can pick any of the numbers in between. They aren't all labeled for you. You can kind of infer what they might mean. All right, hopefully you've got your recording instruments and you're ready to begin. All right, number 1. When I want to feel more positive emotions, such as joy or amusement, I change what I'm thinking about. When I want to feel more positive emotions, such as joy or amusement, I change what I'm thinking about. 2. I keep my emotions to myself. I keep my emotions to myself. 3. When I want to feel less negative emotion, such as sadness or anger, I change what I'm thinking about. When I want to feel less negative emotion, such as sadness or anger, I change what I'm thinking about. 4. When I am feeling positive emotions, I am careful not to express them. When I am feeling positive emotions, I am careful not to express them. Number 5. When I am faced with a stressful situation, I make myself think about it in a way that helps me stay calm. When I am faced with a stressful situation, I make myself think about it in a way that helps me stay calm. 6. I control my emotions by not expressing them. I control my emotions by not expressing them. 7. When I want to feel more positive emotion, I change the way that I'm thinking about the situation. When I want to feel more positive emotion, I change the way I am thinking about the situation. 8. I control my emotions by changing the way I think about the situation that I'm in. I control my emotions by changing the way I think about the situation I'm in. I apologize, my air conditioner popped on. 9. When I am feeling negative emotions, I make sure not to express them. When I am feeling negative emotions, I make sure not to express them. And 10, when I want to feel less negative emotion, I change the way I'm thinking about the situation. When I want to feel less negative emotion, I change the way I'm thinking about the situation. All right, if you need to pause me so you can go back and think about any of the questions, please do that. All right, hopefully everybody's back together and ready to move on. What you just completed is what's called the Gross Emotion Regulation Questionnaire. Gross is someone's last name, so there's an apostrophe at the end because it belongs to him. Gross Emotion Regulation Questionnaire. It assesses two aspects of emotion regulation. Reappraisal, which is an antecedent-focused strategy. Before the emotion response tendencies have been fully activated, before physiology or behavior has changed, we can implement this reappraisal portion. To score that part of the questionnaire, add up the numbers that you gave in response to items 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10. So add those up, and then you're going to calculate the mean. So that means you're going to divide that by 6. So if you want to pause me, all right, hopefully you're back. You added up 1, 3, 5, 7, 8, and 10, and then divided by 6. And then that gives you your score on the reappraisal subscale. The mean score for undergraduate males was 4.60 and for females 4.61. So I think we can argue that there is no difference between males and females, at least in the sample that this was tested on, based on sex. So undergraduate students, it's independent of sex how they score on the reappraisal scale. All right, the suppression scale is the other part of this questionnaire, and it's a response-focused strategy where you would initiate suppression late in the emotion generative process. It primarily affects the behavioral aspect of emotion. To score this, you're going to add up the scores that you gave in response to the ones that you haven't used yet. So that's going to be 2, 4, 6, and 9. And then you're going to calculate the mean by dividing by 4. So go ahead and do that. Add up 2, 4, 6, and 9, and then divide by 4. All right, hopefully you're back and you have added up 2, 4, 6, and 9, and then divided by 4 to get that mean score. For the undergraduates that gross tested, the mean score for males was 3.64, and for females it was 3.11. So males appear to be a little bit more likely than females. It was statistically significantly more likely than females to use suppression as a technique for regulating their emotions. So reappraisal, both sexes use equally likely, and this is where we somehow recast the situation. We somehow recast what's going on in a way so that we can manage our own emotions. Suppression is initiated after you've already started to have an emotional response, and you are basically trying to affect how much you present that emotion for other people to recognize that you're experiencing. The reappraisal scores are uncorrelated with the suppression scores. So these are what we call independent characteristics. We might call these orthogonal because they don't overlap each other at all. So these are independent things, independent approaches to emotion management. What Gross has found by using this survey is that people who score high on reappraisal tend to experience and express greater positive emotion and less negative emotion. High scorers tend to be more likely to have successful interpersonal functioning. They tend to get along better with other people. And high scores are associated with greater well-being. So when we say it's positively related, that means if you have a high score on reappraisal, you also tend to have a high score on well-being measures. The reappraisal approach seems to be a dispositional strategy, and it's a preferred one. It seems to be the one that is adaptive. Suppression, people who score high on this tend to experience and express less positive emotion and experience more negative emotion. It tends to be linked to worse interpersonal functioning, and it's negatively related with well-being. So people who emphasize suppression more than they emphasize reappraisal tend to have these more negative outcomes. So a lot of people think, well, suppression bad, right? Suppression has to be bad. Well, not necessarily. It can be beneficial when there's not enough time to go through a reappraisal process and try and manage your emotions like that. Sometimes things are happening really quickly and you've just got to respond. I see my face is over part of the scale, this slide, so I'm going to turn my face off. There we go. That should make that better. You don't need to see me anyway. So it's not like one of these approaches is always good and one of them is always bad. Suppression has its place. One of the things we're going to revisit over and over again, and Ekman talks about it a lot in his book, is the idea that our emotions and the way that we handle our emotions are by and large probably going to be traced back to sort of evolutionarily adaptive strategies, right? And so you wouldn't have suppression as a strategy if it didn't serve some sort of benefit. So it's definitely got a leg up on reappraisal when you're in a really, sort of rapidly changing situation where you're assessing things and you don't have time to try and manage your emotions. Just ignore them and move on. I'm thinking of dangerous situations. I'm thinking about like first responders, or if you're in a fight, or you're a soldier, or dangerous situations. You can imagine suppression would probably be the better strategy than stopping and thinking about, why am I feeling like this? Maybe I could change something. That you don't have time. You've got to just deal. There are probably other examples that aren't so dangerous that probably also would be good examples of times when suppression would be useful. But the ones that are coming to my mind most rapidly are the sort of dangerous situations. So Gross developed a process model of emotional regulation, and here's how he draws it out. It's got these 5 levels on those boxes on the top, where the first level is selecting your situation. The next level is modifying your situation. The next level is attentional deployment, right? Like, what am I going to pay attention to? The next box is cognitive change, or what he calls reappraisal. And then you've got response modulation, what he calls suppression, that we just tested. And then we've got a bunch of other stuff going on below it. He labels situation selection, modification, attentional deployment, and cognitive change as the antecedent focused strategies. And then we've got response modulation as your response focused strategy. So his model assumes that we exert considerable control over our emotions, that we have the ability to manage our emotions, prevent ourselves from being in situations that we know might elicit strong emotions that are hard to manage. When we're in the middle of a situation, we can modify the situation itself, or what we're going to focus on about the situation, or we might just reappraise what the situation means so that we then don't have to experience the emotions that we don't want to experience, or we can encourage ourselves to experience emotions that we want to experience. So he's saying that during these 5 stages, we have many opportunities to exert control over our emotions. We can use a variety of strategies to influence the emotions that we're having and when we have those emotions. It's not like we just have one bag of tricks and this is all we can do to try and control our emotions. We have lots of different strategies. These strategies include some that are conscious, that you know that you're doing. Some of them are non-conscious. They're sort of happening automatically. Maybe upon reflection, you realize that you did it, but maybe at the time you didn't even notice that you were doing this behavior or thought process. So all the conscious and non-conscious strategies that we use to increase or maintain or decrease one or more of the components that make up an emotion. So the components would be things like feelings, behaviors, the physiological responses. So all the things that we do to, let's say, increase the feelings that we're having, right? Or to decrease the maladaptive behaviors that we're displaying, or just to maintain this level of physiological responding that we're experiencing, right? All these conscious and non-conscious things that we do are all part of our attempts to manage our emotions. So let's apply Gross's process model of emotional regulation to a specific example. So let's say that you and your romantic partner have recently broken up, and that you have a lot of friends in common, and you both are invited to the same party, and you know that your ex is likely to be there. So one thing that you could do is decide whether to go to the party or not. You might decide not to go. I don't want to see them. I'm not ready for that. Or you might decide to go to the party and just say, I'm not going to talk to them. I'm just going to act like they're not there. Or maybe I'm going to decide, okay, I'm going to go, but I'm just going to have small talk with them. I'll just be nice. I'll be pleasant. I'll ask how they've been, and I'll move on with my life. And I'll move to other parts of the room and try and have a good time. Those strategies, deciding not to talk to them at all, or deciding to have just small talk with them, or whatever variation that you might have, that's called situation modification, right? So you can select the situation or not, decide to go to the party or not. If you decide to go to the party, you can modify the situation. I don't have to be there and stand across the room and stare at them all night, wondering if they're having any luck finding a new romantic partner. Like, I don't have to do that. The situation doesn't have to control. Instead, I can modify the situation to be something that I can handle, that I'll feel okay with. Okay. Then we have the attentional deployment phase in the green box. And so we might say, if I'm feeling okay with the small talk with my ex, I might feel okay watching the people doing karaoke at the party, which might include my ex. Or I might only notice my ex whenever I see my ex flirting with someone. And that suddenly has got my attention, and I'm just staring to see whether this flirting is going to work or not. So we can decide where to place our attention. So, maybe we've decided to modify the situation. I'm just going to engage in small talk, be pleasant, and move on. And then maybe I'm going to decide I'm not going to deploy my attention towards my ex at all. Once if we've walked away, I'm going to do what I would normally do with a stranger at a party and lose track of them. And instead, I'm going to enjoy watching the people doing karaoke. I'm not going to sit here and watch my ex flirt. Let's say I decided to watch my ex flirt, though. I may experience, an attempt to give what I'm seeing some meaning. So I might say, a reappraisal kind of approach where I say, you know what? I'm glad to see that my ex is happy and having a good time and that other people are interested in them. They see what I saw. I feel good about it. Or I might experience a reappraisal where I say, that person's better looking than me. That person seems more successful than me. That person seems funnier than me. That new person seems better than me. And that could cause an emotion response in the big red splat there of jealousy or maybe even anger. How dare my ex be able to move on before I was able to move on? How dare this new person be better than I am in any way, shape, or form, right? And then now in the response focused part of the flow chart, we've got, what am I going to do? Maybe I drink too much as I'm watching all of this and I'm feeling bad myself. And so I drink too much. And now maybe I have some behaviors that start to emerge because now that I'm drinking too much, I don't have my normal filters on and I might start saying or doing what I really feel like saying or doing, right? Or maybe I'm going to invoke some response modulation and suppress some of my emotions and say, I'm not feeling jealous. I'm not feeling angry. This is not the appropriate time. I'm not going to get drunk to deny it. I'm just going to tell myself, you know what? Don't act on those emotions. Don't show anybody what you're feeling. It's fine. I attempted to draw that arrow going back, which was remarkably difficult in PowerPoint. It's shocking how hard it is to make an arrow. But what's really important to remember is that this is a bit of a feedback loop. So, how I respond and how I feel by the end of all of this is going to have an impact on, the next opportunity I have for situation selection. And so I might decide, next time I find out that my ex is going to a party, I felt awful last time I was there and, wanted to drink too much and really had to stuff down my feelings a lot so people wouldn't think I was being a big baby. And so, I'm just not doing it. I'm just not going. I'm going to avoid situations where my ex is. Or I might, have had a better set of responses where I was like, I did some small talk, watched the karaoke, didn't even see my partner with a new person because I was busy watching karaoke and that's the only place I deployed my attention. I'm like, it went fine. Everything was fine. So I may find that I'm more than happy to go to that situation again because it worked out fine. It's really a matter of sort of how you handle things at each level. But it's important to remember this is a feedback loop. So, how it went will impact your selection of situations in the future. So Gross considers this a process model because you sort of flow through and at each step, you put it in different boxes because at each step you have this sort of set of options of how you can react, right? I can choose to go to the party or not. If I choose to go to the party, I can choose to act this way or that way. I can decide where to deploy my attention. I can decide how to appraise what's going on in the situation, and then that can have an impact on my emotional response. And then I can decide how I'm going to deal with that emotional response, right? Like you have decisions at every stage, and ultimately how it all works out is going to have an impact on your future pass through this loop when you're given another opportunity to be in that situation. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. This idea that, you have a lot of cognitions going on as you're, managing your own emotions, you're regulating your emotions. Our book talks a little bit about, in future chapters, it talks a little bit about how, what if you see an emotion on someone else's face? You have an opportunity. Did you deploy your attention and see these signs of them experiencing an emotion? You can appraise what that emotion means on their face, and then you can decide what your response is going to be. So our text, our book that I'm using as a text, right, talks a little bit about modulating, your own response to other people's emotions and deciding how to respond to those in a very similar way to what Gross talks about as far as how you manage your own emotions. So hopefully that'll set you up for understanding those chapters better, having seen this process model. All right, well, in the next segment, we're going to talk about some implications of our different styles with how we manage our emotions, starting off with compassion collapse.